Why is this black girl still standing here? Are you deaf or just stupid? Preston Caldwell III didn't whisper. He wanted everyone to hear. Look at her hands, he pointed with his champagne glass. Cracked, dirty, probably scrubs toilets in the morning. He laughed. And they let her touch my food? Danielle kept her head down. Sir, I can come back when what? When you learn to read? He turned to his assistant. This is what happens when they hire from the ghetto. No education, no class, no brain. He waved her away like a fly. Get me a real server, someone who doesn't smell like the bus. The restaurant went dead silent. A billionaire, a black waitress, 50 rich people watching. No one defended her. But Danielle didn't cry. She didn't run. She smiled. And what she did next made Preston Caldwell choke on his own arrogance. Danielle straightened her spine. Her hand slipped into her apron pocket. Her fingers wrapped around a worn dictionary. Pages soft from years of use. Her grandmother's handwriting inside. Her anchor. She took one step toward Preston's table. Not away. Toward. And opened her mouth. But the words that came out weren't English. They were French. Perfect Parisian French. The kind spoken in diplomatic halls and five-star restaurants along the Champs-Élysées. Sir, I understand your order completely. Filet mignon, medium rare, béarnaise sauce on the side. Would you also like to see our wine selection this evening? Preston's champagne glass stopped halfway to his lips. His assistant's pen clattered to the table. But Danielle wasn't finished. German came next. Crisp, precise, Munich accent. Or perhaps Mr. Caldwell would prefer German? I can serve him in that language as well. She used him. Third person. The same way Preston referred to himself, throwing his arrogance back at him like a mirror. Then Spanish flowed out, smooth as music, Castilian dialect. Maybe Spanish is more comfortable for the gentleman than Italian, melodic, Florentine. Italian works beautifully, too, if Mr. Caldwell prefers. She stopped, planted her feet, and looked Preston Caldwell directly in the eyes. No anger, no fear, no trembling, just absolute, unshakable calm. I speak 7 languages, Mr. Caldwell. English is actually the easiest one. She tilted her head slightly, a gesture that said everything. Now, would Preston Caldwell still like someone else to serve him? Or can we proceed with his order? The silence that followed was deafening. Not a single fork moved. Not a single glass clinked. The piano player had stopped mid-note. Nobody knew when. At the bar, a cocktail glass slipped from the bartender's frozen fingers. It shattered on the floor. Nobody moved to clean it. The only sound was liquid dripping onto tile. Drip, drip, drip. Chef Francois Beaumont stood in the kitchen doorway. His mouth hung open. His towel had fallen from his shoulder, and he hadn't noticed. David Palmer, the restaurant manager, stood paralyzed in the middle of the room. A menu dangled from his limp hand. At a corner table, a well-dressed older man with silver hair set down his wine glass very slowly. His eyes lit up with something that looked like recognition, like he had been waiting for exactly this moment. He pulled out his phone and started typing notes. Near the reception desk, Miranda Hayes watched with narrowed eyes. Her face had gone pale, but not from shock, from jealousy. Pure, burning jealousy. She had worked at this restaurant for 8 years. 8 years of smiling at rich customers. 8 years of being invisible. And this waitress had just become the most talked-about person in the room in 30 seconds. Miranda's jaw tightened. But all eyes were on Preston. Preston Caldwell III. Billionaire. Tech titan. A man who had never been speechless in 62 years of life. He sat there like someone had reached across the table and slapped him with a silk glove. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. His face cycled through colors. Red, white, red again. No words came out. For the first time in his entire privileged existence, Preston Caldwell had absolutely nothing to say. Danielle's hands trembled slightly beneath the table. She hid it well. This was the first time in 18 months she had shown anyone at this job who she really was. 18 months of hiding, of keeping her head down, of being exactly what people expected. And now the mask was off. She didn't know if this would save her or destroy her. But there was no going back now. 5 seconds of silence stretched into eternity. Preston recovered first. Men like him always do. They have too much pride to stay down. He cleared his throat, adjusted his collar, set down his champagne glass with deliberate control. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer, almost human. Where did you learn to speak like that? No more third person, no more Preston Caldwell, just a man asking a question he genuinely wanted answered. The public library, Danielle said evenly. Community college before I had to drop out. And the immigrants in my neighborhood who were kind enough to teach me. You dropped out? Life doesn't always follow the plan, Mr. Caldwell. Something flickered across his face. It might have been respect. It might have been calculation. With men like Preston, it was hard to tell the difference. Before he could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen. His expression changed instantly. The color drained from his face. Damn it! He answered. The voice on the other end spoke rapid German, business German, legal terms, tight deadlines, pressure. Preston didn't understand a single word. He covered the phone and hissed at his assistant. Where the hell is Thomas, my interpreter? Food poisoning, sir. He's been vomiting all day. We called every agency in Chicago. Nobody's available on this short notice. This is the Munich deal. Klaus Schmidt, $40 million. He refuses to conduct business in anything but German. The deadline is midnight tonight. Preston looked around the room desperately. Then his eyes landed on Danielle, the woman he had called stupid. The woman he said smelled like a bus. The woman he wanted removed from his sight. He needed her, and they both knew it. You said you speak German. I do. I need your help. 4 words. 4 simple words that changed everything. Preston Caldwell III, billionaire, titan of industry, master of the universe, was asking a black waitress for help. The same black waitress he had tried to humiliate 5 minutes ago. Danielle could have said no. She had every right, every reason. Her hand touched the dictionary in her pocket, and she heard her grandmother's voice echoing across the years. True strength isn't revenge when you have the power. It's choosing to help when you have every right to refuse. Give me the phone. She took it from his hand, listened for 30 seconds. The German was fast, technical, impatient. Then she responded. Perfect German. Munich accent. Formal business register. Good evening, Mr. Schmidt. My name is Danielle. I'll be interpreting for Mr. Caldwell tonight. How may I assist you? The voice on the other end paused, surprised by the flawless accent. For 5 minutes, Danielle conducted a negotiation that Preston couldn't follow. But she wasn't just translating words. She was translating culture. When Schmidt expressed concern about a timeline, Danielle recognized it as a German cultural value. Punctuality was sacred. She explained this to Preston, suggested restructuring the offer. When tension rose over a contract clause, she deployed a German proverb. Good things take time, she said in Schmidt's native tongue. He laughed. The tension dissolved. The deal was saved. Before hanging up, Schmidt switched to English so Preston could understand. Mr. Caldwell, your new interpreter is remarkable. She sounds like she was educated in Munich itself. Wherever did you find her? Preston stared at Danielle. The public library, and a bookshop owner in Detroit. Extraordinary. I look forward to working with her again. Good evening. The call ended. Preston slumped back in his chair like a man who had just survived a car accident. You just saved me $40 million. I translated a phone call. The deal was yours. No. He shook his head slowly. You understood what he actually meant, not just what he said. My last 3 interpreters couldn't do that. Danielle held his gaze. That's what language is, Mr. Caldwell. Not just words, meaning, context, culture. He studied her for a long moment. You're wasted here. I know. But neither of them noticed Miranda Hayes watching from the shadows. Her eyes were narrow. Her phone was in her hand, and her jealousy was about to destroy everything. To understand why Danielle helped the man who humiliated her, you need to know where she came from. And why, when she looked at Preston Caldwell, she didn't just see an arrogant billionaire. She saw the man who destroyed her family. Detroit, 2007. A small kitchen. Yellow walls. The smell of cinnamon rolls baking in the oven. Jazz playing softly on an old radio. 10-year-old Danielle sat at the table with her grandmother Ruth. Books covered every surface, dictionaries, language guides, grammar workbooks borrowed from the library. Ruth's hands were weathered from decades of hard work, but they held a small pocket dictionary with infinite tenderness. Language is not just words, baby girl. Ruth's voice was warm as Sunday morning. It's a key. It opens doors that other people don't even know exist. She pressed the dictionary into Danielle's small hands. I started with this one, French, then German, then Spanish. She smiled. You'll go further than I ever did. Inside the dictionary were handwritten notes in 4 languages. Ruth's own journey, mapped in fading ink. Promise me you'll never stop learning. I promise, Grandma. That dictionary never left Danielle's side. 8 years later, the world fell apart. 2015, Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Ruth lay in a bed that seemed to swallow her shrinking frame. Cancer. Caught too late because she couldn't afford regular checkups. Danielle held her grandmother's hand. It felt like paper, like it might crumble if she squeezed too hard. Promise me. Ruth's voice was barely a whisper. Never stop believing in yourself. Never let anyone tell you what you can't be. I promise, Grandma. I promise. Ruth's eyes closed. She never opened them again. 3 weeks after the funeral, Danielle's mother, Grace, came home from work in tears. Grace had worked at Caldwell Electronics for 18 years. Line supervisor. 45 workers under her. Perfect attendance record. Not one sick day in 18 years. That afternoon, everyone had been called to the factory floor. A video screen flickered to life. A man with silver hair appeared. Expensive suit. Corner office. The kind of face that had never known a moment of real struggle. The board, under Preston Caldwell's leadership, has determined that consolidation is necessary. The Detroit facility will cease production effective January 1st. 2,000 workers. Terminated. 3 days before Christmas. Grace Stevens was employee number 1,847. Preston didn't read any names. He didn't apologize. He didn't even come in person. He announced it from a screen, referring to himself in third person, like he wasn't responsible. Like Preston Caldwell was some separate entity that made these decisions. Like the 2,000 human beings losing their jobs weren't even worth a face-to-face goodbye. Grace lost her job, then her health insurance. The heart condition she has now? It could have been caught years ago, treated before it became critical. But without insurance, she couldn't afford the checkups. Now, 10 years later, Grace needs surgery. $85,000. And Danielle works 2 jobs trying to save her. Tonight, in this fancy Chicago restaurant, Danielle recognized Preston Caldwell the moment he sat down. She had seen that face on a video screen 10 years ago. The face that told her mother, 3 days before Christmas, that 18 years of perfect service meant nothing. He didn't recognize her. Why would he? He never knew any of their names. Danielle felt the dictionary in her pocket, her grandmother's handwriting on the first page. True strength is not revenge. It's choosing to help when you have the power to destroy. She could expose him right now, scream the truth in front of everyone. But revenge wouldn't save her mother. Only moving forward could do that. So she swallowed the rage and kept working. The restaurant buzzed with whispers. Did you hear? 7 languages. From the library. From her neighbors. Preston couldn't let it go. 30 minutes after the Munich call, he summoned Danielle back to his table. His entire demeanor had shifted. The cruelty was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like curiosity. Sit down. I'm still on the clock, Mr. Caldwell. 5 minutes. I'll make it worth your while. Danielle sat, but she kept her posture ready to stand at any moment. She wasn't relaxing. She was waiting. The German was perfect, Preston said. Munich accent. Even Schmidt noticed. Where did you really learn? I told you. The public library. Online resources. And Mr. Braun. Who's Mr. Braun? He owns a used bookshop in my neighborhood. Former literature professor from Munich, Ludwig Maximilians University. He retired and came to America. Missed teaching. I wanted to learn. We made a deal. A bookshop owner. Preston shook his head. And the French? Madame Colette. Retired teacher from Lyon. She volunteers at the community center on Saturdays. Spanish? Senora Gutierrez, my neighbor. She's from Guadalajara. Makes the best tamales in Detroit. I help her grandson with homework. She teaches me Spanish. Italian? Mostly YouTube, plus 1 semester at community college before I dropped out. Portuguese? Mrs. Santos, Brazilian lady in my building. I babysit her daughter sometimes. She teaches me in exchange. That's 6. Preston leaned forward. You said 7. Arabic, from Mr. Mansour. He runs the grocery store on my block. He's from Lebanon originally. Preston pulled out his phone again. Ali Hassan, my business partner in Dubai. He refuses to speak English on principle, says it corrupts the soul. He smiled slightly. Let's see how good your Arabic really is. He dialed, put it on speaker. A rapid stream of Arabic exploded from the phone, demanding, impatient. The accent was Gulf Arabic, formal and sharp. Preston's eyes challenged her. Danielle listened for 3 seconds, then responded, flawless Gulf Arabic, perfect formal greeting. Peace be upon you, Mr. Hassan. I am Danielle. Mr. Caldwell wishes to discuss the contract details with you. Dead silence on the other end. Then laughter, rich and warm. Preston! Hassan's voice boomed through the speaker. Who is this woman? She speaks better Arabic than your last 3 interpreters combined. She sounds like she grew up in Abu Dhabi. She learned from her neighborhood. Then send me the address of this magical neighborhood. I want to hire the entire block. Hassan was still laughing. Don't lose this one, my friend. She's worth more than your Munich deal. The call ended. Preston stared at Danielle like he was seeing her for the first time. 7 languages, from a library and your neighbors. Knowledge doesn't have a zip code, Mr. Caldwell. He nodded slowly. You're wasted here. You've said that twice now. Because I mean it twice. For one moment, something almost like respect flickered in his eyes. But in the shadows near the reception desk, Miranda Hayes was typing furiously on her phone. Her plan was taking shape, and Danielle had no idea what was coming. 9:15 p.m. Danielle was clearing a table when Miranda approached Preston. Mr. Caldwell. Miranda's voice was silk and poison. May I have a word? It's about the waitress. Preston barely glanced up. What about her? Miranda leaned in close, lowered her voice to a concerned whisper. I've been watching her for 18 months. She's worked here since the beginning, and not once did she reveal she speaks other languages. She paused for effect. Don't you find that strange? Now she had his attention. She was standing right there during your Munich call, before you even asked for help. She heard everything. $40 million, bid details, competitor names, strategy. Preston's expression darkened. And then she just happened to speak perfect German? Miranda shook her head slowly. Someone with 7 languages working as a waitress for minimum wage? That doesn't add up, sir. What exactly are you suggesting? What if she's been listening to confidential conversations for 18 months, gathering information, selling it to your competitors, to journalists? She let that sink in. Think about it. A woman that talented, hiding in plain sight as a waitress? Either she's running from something, or she's working for someone. Preston had been betrayed before. Business partners who stole his ideas, employees who sold secrets to rivals, family members who sued for inheritance. He trusted no one, and Miranda knew exactly which wounds to press. Why would she hide it for 18 months? Preston asked. Exactly my question, sir. Miranda nodded gravely. Someone with nothing to hide doesn't hide. Get me your manager. David Palmer arrived within seconds, nervous, sweating. He knew that tone. Yes, Mr. Caldwell? That waitress, Danielle. Terminate her, immediately. David's face went white. Sir? She just helped you save... She was eavesdropping on confidential business communications. She concealed her abilities for 18 months. That's deception. That's a security risk. But there's no proof. I'm the largest private donor to your parent company. I dine here 3 times a week. Are you really going to argue with me over a waitress? David looked across the room at Danielle. She was smiling at a customer, laughing at something they said, completely unaware that her world was about to collapse. He closed his eyes. Yes, sir. David walked toward Danielle like a man walking to an execution, his own. Danielle, his voice cracked. I need to speak with you. Her smile faded. What's wrong? I'm so sorry. I have to let you go. Effective immediately. What? The word came out strangled. Why? Mr. Caldwell believes... There are concerns about... I'm sorry. It's out of my hands. Concerns about what? I just saved his deal. David couldn't meet her eyes. Please, just go, before it gets worse. They escorted her through the kitchen, past the line cooks who suddenly found their stations fascinating, past the prep staff who couldn't look up, past the dishwashers who pretended not to see. Elena rushed toward her, tears streaming. Danielle, what happened? This is crazy. Stay out of it. Danielle grabbed Elena's arm. You'll lose your job too. But I can tell them, you have your mother to take care of. Don't. They pushed her toward the back door, but her path took her past the VIP section, past Preston Caldwell. He stood in the doorway, watching her walk of shame with cold satisfaction. No guilt, no remorse, just the expression of a man who had eliminated a problem. Their eyes met. In Danielle's gaze was something Preston didn't recognize. She had known who he was the entire time. She had helped him anyway, and he had just proved exactly what kind of man he was. Behind Preston, Miranda smiled. You made the right call, sir. Better safe than sorry. The back door opened. Cold air rushed in. And rain. So much rain. Danielle stepped out into the darkness. The door slammed behind her, and everything she had worked for shattered on the wet concrete. The rain came down like the sky was angry. Not a gentle drizzle, a punishment. cold Chicago November rain that cut through clothing like knives. Danielle had no umbrella, no coat. Both were still inside, locked in her locker. She wasn't allowed to go back. She pressed her back against the brick wall of the alley and slid down until she hit the ground. The pavement was wet, dirty. Puddles soaked through her thin uniform in seconds. She didn't care. For the first time that night, she let herself break. The tears came hard. Not quiet, dignified tears. These were the ugly kind. The kind that come from somewhere deep in your chest. The kind that shake your whole body. 18 months. 18 months of hiding who she really was. Of smiling at insults. Of pretending to be exactly what people expected. Of being invisible. Tonight, she had finally shown the world her truth. And the world had punished her for it. The rain plastered her hair to her face. Her teeth chattered uncontrollably. Her fingers were going numb. She reached into her apron pocket. The dictionary. Water had already seeped in. The old leather was soaked. She opened it with shaking hands. The first page. Her grandmother's handwriting. Language is a key. It opens doors others don't see. The ink was running. The words were dissolving, fading into nothing right before her eyes. No, 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 no. She tried to shield it with her body, curled around it like she could protect it from the storm. But the water kept coming, kept destroying. The last piece of her grandmother was disappearing in her hands. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She almost didn't answer. What was the point? But the screen said Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Her mother's hospital. Miss Stevens? This is Northwestern Memorial calling about your mother, Grace Stevens. Danielle's heart stopped. Is she okay? She's stable, but I'm calling about her surgery. It's been scheduled for 2 weeks from now. Yes, I know. I'm working on the payment. That's why I'm calling. The voice was flat, bureaucratic. We need a deposit of $20,000 within 48 hours to hold the surgical slot. Danielle couldn't breathe. 48 hours? Hospital policy, Miss Stevens. We've already extended the deadline twice. This is the final extension. If we don't receive the deposit by Wednesday at 5 p.m., we'll have to release the slot to another patient. But I just... She stopped. What could she say? I just lost my job? I'm sorry, Miss Stevens. I wish I had better news. The line went dead. Danielle stared at the phone in her rain-soaked hand. $20,000. 48 hours. She had $12,000 saved. Every penny she'd scraped together over 3 years of working 2 jobs. She needed $8,000 more, and she had just been fired. The math was impossible. She looked at the ruined dictionary, at her grandmother's words fading into oblivion, at the black sky pouring down on her. This was rock bottom. No job, no money, no hope. And her mother might die because of it. Her phone still glowed in her hand. She scrolled through her contacts. Packwright Warehouse, $18 an hour. No skills required. Night shift available. She could call right now. Beg for a position. Work doubles. Sell her car. Pawn everything she owned. Maybe she could scrape together $8,000 in 48 hours. Maybe. Her finger hovered over the call button. Then the back door of the restaurant opened. Golden light spilled into the dark alley. A figure stood in the doorway. Tall, silver hair, well-dressed but not flashy. He stepped out into the rain and opened an umbrella over Danielle's head. The rain stopped hitting her face. For the first time in what felt like hours, she could see clearly. The man looked down at her with kind eyes. I've been watching you for 6 months, Danielle. She froze. Tonight, you finally showed me exactly what I needed to see. Who are you? How do you know my name? He extended his hand to help her up. I know who taught you German. I know your grandmother's name was Ruth. I know your mother needs surgery. Danielle stared at him. And I know that Preston Caldwell just made the biggest mistake of his life. Under the awning of the building next door, Jonathan Mercer draped his cashmere coat over Danielle's shivering shoulders. She was soaked to the bone, shaking, clutching a ruined dictionary to her chest, but her eyes were sharp, suspicious. "How do you know all that about me?" Mercer smiled. It was a patient smile, the smile of a man who had waited a long time for this moment. 6 months ago, I had dinner with an old friend, Heinrich Braun. Danielle's eyes widened. Mr. Braun, the bookshop owner who taught her German. Heinrich told me about a young black woman who came into his shop every week, bought old German books with her tip money, stayed for hours practicing conversation. Mercer paused. He said you speak German better than his own grandson who was born in Berlin. Mr. Braun talks too much. He's been my friend for 30 years. He knows what I'm looking for. Mercer's expression grew serious. People with extraordinary gifts that the traditional system fails. People who slip through the cracks. People like you. So you've been stalking me. I've been scouting you, the way sports teams scout athletes, the way investors scout startups. Danielle wrapped the coat tighter around herself. And tonight? You just happened to be at that restaurant? I booked that table 2 weeks ago because I knew Preston Caldwell would be there. I've known Preston for 20 years. His jaw tightened. I knew exactly how he would treat someone who looks like you, doing the job you do. You wanted him to humiliate me? I wanted to see what you would do under pressure. Anyone can be talented when things are easy. I needed to see what you're made of when someone tries to break you. Danielle was quiet for a moment. And what did you learn? That you're everything Heinrich said you were. And more. He met her eyes. You didn't just speak 4 languages. You chose to help the man who insulted you. You chose excellence over revenge. That's rare. That's exactly what I need. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder. Director of Global Client Relations at Mercer Global Partners. Starting salary, $140,000 annually. Full medical benefits for you and your immediate family. International travel, and a scholarship fund for you to give away to people like yourself. Danielle couldn't process the numbers. $140,000, 10 times what she made now. And the $20,000 my mother needs in 48 hours? Consider it an advance on your signing bonus. The money can be in your account by morning. Danielle stared at him, waiting for the catch. What do you want in return? Straight to business. I like that. Mercer nodded toward the restaurant. There's a woman arriving in 15 minutes. Eleanor Whitmore, British billionaire. $200 million deal. She requires all business communication in German. Her interpreter canceled. My backup isn't good enough. You need me. I've needed you for 6 months, but right now, tonight, you might be the only person in Chicago who can help me close this deal. Danielle looked at the restaurant door, at the golden light spilling from the windows, at the place that had just thrown her away like garbage. You want me to go back in there? I want you to walk back in there and show every single person in that room exactly how wrong they were about you. He paused. Including Preston Caldwell. Danielle thought about her mother, about Kevin's college applications, about the ruined dictionary in her hands, about her grandmother's voice. What we give comes back in ways we never expect. She took Mercer's hand. Let's go. Together, they walked toward the front door. Not the back door, the front. The front door of the Meridian swung open. Every head in the restaurant turned. Danielle Stevens walked in wearing a soaked waitress uniform and a cashmere coat worth more than her car. Jonathan Mercer walked beside her, and the entire room went silent. David Palmer's face drained of color. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Miranda Hayes froze mid-sentence with a customer. Her smile curdled into something ugly. Elena dropped an entire tray of glasses. Crystals shattered across the floor. She didn't notice. She was too busy grinning. Chef Francois stepped out of the kitchen. His eyes went wide, then crinkled with something like approval. And Preston Caldwell slowly rose from his chair. For the first time that night, he looked uncertain. Mercer addressed the room with quiet authority. "Good evening, everyone. This woman is now the Director of Global Client Relations at Mercer Global Partners. She's here tonight as my personal guest and business associate." He turned to David Palmer. "I trust that won't be a problem." "Of course not, Mr. Mercer. Whatever you need." Miranda stepped forward, desperate. "Mr. Mercer, I should warn you about this woman. She was terminated tonight for what?" Mercer's voice cut like ice. "For helping Mr. Caldwell close a $40 million deal? For speaking 6 languages better than anyone in this building? Please, tell me what exactly she was terminated for. I'm fascinated." Miranda's mouth opened, closed. Nothing came out. "That's what I thought." Before anyone could respond, the front door opened again. A gust of cold air swept through the restaurant. A woman entered, small, elderly, but radiating authority that made the air feel heavier. Silver hair swept back elegantly. Burberry coat, pearl earrings. Eyes that had seen everything and judged most of it insufficient. Eleanor Whitmore, British billionaire, one of the wealthiest women in Europe. 2 assistants trailed behind her, carrying briefcases. Mrs. Whitmore surveyed the restaurant with obvious displeasure. She spoke rapid German to her assistant. The tone was not happy. The assistant hurried to Mercer, looking panicked. "Mr. Mercer, we have a problem. Mrs. Whitmore's regular interpreter had a family emergency. The replacement agency sent someone who spoke textbook German, not business German. She was unimpressed." "Where's the replacement now?" "Mrs. Whitmore sent him away. She says she'll only work with someone who truly understands the language. Otherwise, she's flying back to London tomorrow." $200 million. About to walk out the door. Mercer glanced at Danielle. This was it. Danielle stepped forward. She addressed Mrs. Whitmore in flawless German. Formal register, respectful tone. "Good evening, Mrs. Whitmore. My name is Danielle Stevens. I'll be handling communications between you and Mr. Mercer tonight. If anything is unsatisfactory, please let me know immediately." Mrs. Whitmore stopped. She turned slowly. Her sharp eyes examined Danielle head to toe. The wet uniform, the borrowed coat, the calm confidence. She responded in German, testing. "Your accent. Where did you learn German?" "In Detroit, Mrs. Whitmore, from a bookshop owner named Heinrich Braun. He was a professor at Ludwig Maximilians University before he retired." Mrs. Whitmore's expression shifted. "Heinrich Braun? I know that name. He taught me well, not just the language, the culture, the precision, the honor of keeping one's word." Silence stretched between them. Mrs. Whitmore studied Danielle's face for a long moment. Something flickered in her eyes. Recognition? Memory? Then, slowly, a small smile appeared. "Good. Let's talk business." She walked toward the private dining room. Danielle followed. Every person in that restaurant watched the black waitress they had dismissed walk away beside the most powerful woman in the room. Preston Caldwell sat down heavily. He had just watched the woman he fired become the most important person in the building. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a small voice was beginning to whisper that he had made a terrible mistake. The private dining room was elegant, smaller, more intimate. A crystal chandelier cast warm light over a mahogany table. Old paintings lined the walls. Mrs. Whitmore took the seat at the head of the table. Position of power. Mercer sat across from her. Danielle stood between them. The bridge. Mrs. Whitmore didn't begin with business. She began with interrogation. "How old are you?" The question came in German. Sharp, direct. 28, Mrs. Whitmore. What is your profession? 3 hours ago, I was a waitress in this restaurant. Now, I work for Mr. Mercer. Mrs. Whitmore raised an eyebrow. 3 hours? That quickly? Life changes fast, Mrs. Whitmore, sometimes in a single evening. Something flickered in the older woman's eyes. A recognition, a memory. Then she switched to business. Contract terms poured out in rapid German. Legal terminology. Technical clauses. Financial structures. Danielle translated. But not just words. She translated meaning. She's asking about profit distribution, Danielle explained to Mercer. But her real concern is whether you'll prioritize quarterly returns over long-term partnership. She wants to know if you're building something that lasts or something you'll flip for a quick profit. Tell her we're building a legacy. Danielle turned back to Mrs. Whitmore and used a German proverb. Mr. Mercer says we're not building a flash in the pan. We're building something for generations. As the Germans say, good things take time. Mrs. Whitmore nodded slowly. The negotiation continued. Technical details, cultural navigation, careful translation. At one point, Mrs. Whitmore demanded a clause that Mercer couldn't accept. He was about to refuse directly. That won't work. Danielle stopped him. Don't say no directly. In German business culture, it's too blunt. Offer an alternative. Frame it as collaboration. She turned to Mrs. Whitmore. Mr. Mercer deeply respects your position. He suggests we explore an alternative approach that achieves the same goal while benefiting both parties. May we propose something? Mrs. Whitmore considered, then nodded. The deal was saved. 2 hours of negotiation. Complex. Exhausting. Finally, the contract was nearly complete. But Mrs. Whitmore set down her pen. She looked at Danielle with an expression that had nothing to do with business. What is your family name? Stevens, Mrs. Whitmore. Silence. Complete, absolute silence. Mrs. Whitmore's face changed. Her composure cracked. Her hands began to tremble. Stevens? Yes. Is something wrong? The old woman didn't answer. Her eyes were glistening. We need to speak privately. Her voice shook. Just you and me. She stood slowly. Everyone else, please leave. Mercer looked confused but didn't argue. The room emptied, the door closed, and Eleanor Whitmore looked at Danielle Stevens like she was seeing a ghost from 50 years ago. Your grandmother. Her voice was barely a whisper. Was her name Ruth? Danielle felt the ground shift beneath her feet. How do you know my grandmother's name? Mrs. Whitmore reached into her purse with trembling hands. She pulled out a photograph. Old, faded, black and white. A young black woman standing in front of a small school building. A sign behind her read, Stevens English Academy. This woman saved my life, Mrs. Whitmore said. 50 years ago, in Nigeria. She held out the photograph. Danielle took it and stopped breathing. She knew that face. She had seen it every single day for the first 18 years of her life. It was her grandmother. The door was closed. Just 2 women in a room filled with 50 years of history. Mrs. Whitmore poured tea with both hands, a gesture of profound respect. Her hands shook the entire time. Then she began to speak. In 1970, I was 23 years old, young, idealistic, foolish. Her voice was distant, lost in memory. I had just graduated from Cambridge. My father wanted me to join his shipping company. I wanted to save the world. So I joined an aid organization and flew to Nigeria. She paused. It was just after the Biafran War. You've probably never heard of it. 1 million people died, mostly children. Starvation. Danielle listened in silence. I was distributing supplies in a remote village when our convoy was attacked. Not rebels, just desperate men looking for anything of value. They took everything, beat our driver, and left me on the side of a dirt road with a broken leg and a concussion. Mrs. Whitmore's hands gripped her teacup. I crawled to the nearest village. The clinic turned me away. No supplies, no money. I sat outside in the dirt, bleeding for 6 hours. I thought I was going to die. What happened? She happened. Mrs. Whitmore pushed the photograph toward Danielle. Ruth Stevens, an American teacher running a tiny school for local children. She had nothing herself, less than nothing, but she saw me lying in the dirt and she didn't walk past. Tears began streaming down the old woman's face. She took me to her home, fed me from her own plate when she barely had enough for herself, cleaned my wounds with water she had to walk 2 miles to collect, let me sleep in her bed while she slept on the floor. For how long? 3 months. Mrs. Whitmore's voice broke. 3 months she cared for me like I was her own daughter. She taught me some of the local language, helped me contact the British Embassy, arranged my transport home. And you never saw her again? I tried. The words came out like a confession. God, how I tried. I wrote letters for years. They came back undelivered. She moved back to America and disappeared. I hired private investigators. Nothing. She was just gone. Mrs. Whitmore stood, walked to the window, stared out at the rain. I built my company, made my fortune, and every single year I searched for her. I donated to every school in Nigeria, hoping she would hear about it and reach out. I named a library after her in London. I never stopped looking. She never knew. She never knew any of it. Mrs. Whitmore's shoulders shook. And when I finally had enough resources to find her, she had died. 2015. 3 months before I found the right records. She turned back to Danielle. I was too late. I never got to say thank you. I never got to tell her that everything I have, the company, the money, the influence, all of it exists because a stranger chose to help another stranger on a dirt road in Nigeria. She walked toward Danielle. And then tonight, you walk in, speaking the language I conduct all my business in, carrying yourself exactly like she did, helping people who don't deserve it. She gripped Danielle's hands. The moment you said your name was Stevens, I knew. The way you move, the way you speak, the kindness underneath the strength. You are her blood. I can see it. Danielle looked at the photograph of her grandmother. Young Ruth, standing proud in front of a school she had built with nothing but determination and love. She never told us about you. That was Ruth. Mrs. Whitmore smiled through her tears. She never asked for recognition, never wanted anything in return. Every check I managed to send her over the years came back with the same note. What did it say? Pass it forward. Mrs. Whitmore walked to her briefcase. I owe your grandmother a debt I can never fully repay. She wouldn't take my money when she was alive. But you... She pulled out a checkbook. You are her legacy, her blood. And tonight, I can finally do something. She wrote quickly, tore the check from the book, handed it to Danielle. $500,000. For your mother's surgery, for your brother's education, for you. Danielle stared at the number. I can't accept this. You can, and you will. Mrs. Whitmore's voice was firm. This isn't charity. This is a debt 50 years overdue. Your grandmother gave me everything. Let me give something back to her family. Danielle looked at the check, at the photograph of young Ruth, at this crying billionaire who had searched for her grandmother for half a century, and finally understood. Some things come full circle, not always to the person who gave, but they come back. Always. She took the check. "Thank you," she whispered. "From both of us." Mrs. Whitmore pulled her into an embrace. 78 years old and 28 years old. Connected across 5 decades by a woman who chose kindness on a dirt road in Africa and changed the world without ever knowing it. The door to the private room opened. Danielle and Mrs. Whitmore emerged. Both had red eyes. Both stood tall. Mrs. Whitmore addressed Mercer immediately. "The deal is signed, every clause, but I have one condition." "Name it." She pointed at Danielle. "She handles my account, personally. No one else, ever." Mercer nodded. "Done." The restaurant had been watching, waiting, whispering. Now Preston Caldwell stepped forward. Something had changed in him. The arrogance had deflated. His shoulders sagged. He looked older, smaller. "I owe you an apology." Danielle said nothing. "What I said earlier. The things I called you." He couldn't meet her eyes. "I was wrong." "Why?" "Why what?" "Why did you look at me and see nothing worth respecting?" Preston had no answer. But Danielle did. "You don't remember me, do you?" "Remember you? We just met tonight." "We haven't met, but you've affected my life more than almost anyone." She took a step closer. "Detroit, December 2015, Caldwell Electronics. You closed the factory 3 days before Christmas. 2,000 people lost their jobs." Preston's face went white. "You announced it on a video screen. You didn't even come in person. You said, 'The board, under Preston Caldwell's leadership, has determined that consolidation is necessary.'" Her voice was steady. Not angry, just true. "Third person. Like you weren't responsible. Like it was someone else destroying 2,000 families right before the holidays." "I didn't know. My mother worked there for 18 years. Grace Stevens, line supervisor, 45 workers under her. She never missed a single day of work." Preston sank into a chair. "You signed 2,000 termination letters. You didn't read one name. My mother was number 1,847. His head dropped. She lost her job, then her health insurance. The heart condition she has now? It could have been caught years ago, treated before it became critical, but she couldn't afford checkups without insurance." Danielle stood over him. "Tonight you called me too dumb to serve you, but you never saw me, just like you never saw those 2,000 people. We were numbers on a spreadsheet, costs to be cut." "What can I do?" His voice cracked. "To make this right?" "You can't. 10 years is gone. You can't give them back." "Then what do you want from me?" "Remember this moment. The next time you want to dismiss someone because of how they look or where they work, remember tonight. Remember that you almost destroyed someone extraordinary because you couldn't be bothered to see them." She turned away. Mercer spoke up. "Preston, one more thing. Your assistant manager Miranda told you Danielle was a security threat, that she was eavesdropping for competitors." Preston looked up. She lied. She was jealous. Preston turned to Miranda. "Is that true?" Miranda stammered. I thought—" "You're fired. Get out." Miranda grabbed her purse and fled. The drama settled. Elena rushed forward and hugged Danielle. "You did it! You actually did it!" But Danielle saw something in Elena's eyes, a sadness underneath the joy. "Elena, what's wrong?" "Nothing. Tonight is your night. Tell me." Elena's face crumbled. "My mom. In Mexico. Same thing. Her heart. $60,000 for surgery. I've been sending money for 2 years, but—" Danielle looked at the check in her hand. $500,000. Enough to save her mother, pay for Kevin's college, change her entire life. She could keep it all. No one would blame her. But she heard her grandmother's voice. Pass it forward. She pulled out a pen, wrote on the back of the check, then carefully tore it. She handed a portion to Elena. For your mom. Elena stared at it. Danielle. No, this is yours. My grandmother saved a stranger 50 years ago with nothing but kindness. She didn't ask for anything. Danielle smiled through tears. I'm just continuing what she started. Elena collapsed into her arms, sobbing. Mrs. Whitmore watched, then spoke. You truly are Ruth's granddaughter. She turned to her assistant. Write another check, $100,000, to Miss Elena Vasquez, for her mother's surgery. Elena couldn't speak. She just held on to Danielle like a lifeline, and everyone in that restaurant understood. This wasn't about languages. It wasn't about money. It was about who we choose to be when we have every reason to choose differently. Mercer called for attention. The restaurant fell silent. Tonight, I witnessed something I will never forget. He looked at Danielle. A woman was publicly humiliated, called too dumb to serve, fired based on lies, left standing in the rain with nothing. He paused. Then she walked back in, closed a $200 million deal, reunited two people separated by 50 years, and gave away half her fortune to help a friend. He smiled. Danielle Stevens learned 7 languages from library books and immigrant neighbors. She has no degree, no credentials, no fancy pedigree. She's now the Director of Global Client Relations at Mercer Global Partners, and I have never in 30 years made a better hire. Applause erupted, from the staff, from the diners, even from Preston, sitting alone, clapping slowly. 1 month later, Danielle's office on the 47th floor looked out over Lake Michigan. On her desk sat the dictionary, professionally restored, her grandmother's handwriting preserved forever under archival glass. On the wall hung Ruth's photograph from Nigeria. Beside it, a framed letter from Mrs. Whitmore. And a new photo. Danielle and Elena, arms around each other, both smiling. Within 3 months, Danielle closed deals on 4 continents. Every language she learned in her neighborhood became a bridge to a new market. Her mother, Grace, had successful surgery. She's now cancer-free and volunteers at a community health clinic. Elena's mother recovered too. Elena is studying to become a nurse. Kevin got into Northwestern on a full scholarship. He's studying linguistics. He says his sister inspired him. The Ruth Stevens Language Initiative, the scholarship fund Danielle created, sponsored 23 students in its first year. All from underserved communities. Not all with degrees. All with gifts the world almost missed. But here's what matters most. Danielle went back to the Meridian, this time as a guest. She sat at the same corner table where Preston once sat, where he called her too dumb to serve him. Elena served her, grinning. So this is how the other half lives. Still feels weird. I keep wanting to clear the plates. A young black server approached. New, nervous, maybe 19. He stumbled over the specials. Danielle smiled gently. Don't be nervous. I was you a year ago. His eyes went wide. She slid him a business card. Call me. I might have an opportunity for you. He took it with trembling hands. That's when she noticed. In his apron pocket, a worn Spanish-English dictionary, dog-eared, held together with tape, just like hers. She smiled. The cycle continues. There are people all around you waiting to be seen. The barista who memorizes your order. The janitor who quotes philosophy. The server who speaks 7 languages. They're not waiting for a billionaire to discover them. They're waiting for someone to ask the right question, to look past the uniform, to see the person underneath. So today, ask. Ask the invisible person what they know, what they dream, what book they carry in their pocket. You might just change a life, maybe even your own, because talent doesn't ask for permission. It just waits for someone to listen.
Behind every headline is a human story. At Beat Stories, we go deeper, where emotion meets evidence and drama reveals the system. If this story made you pause, reflect, or feel something, don't forget to subscribe. There's more to come.